What is going on, everyone? Happy Wednesday and welcome back to our Trade of Black podcast. Good to see you all here this week, midweek. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Big show coming up. AV is back. We're going to bring in Margaret Brody. What are some interesting numbers that Rubicon just reported in Q1? Really great story in the Canadian market as we see this turnaround story in this Canadian market, and they are at the forefront right now. So it's great to see as well. Thomas Winstanley. He's the executive vice president of edibles.com, an e-commerce platform for hemp curated products. We're going to get his take on what happened last week in Texas. Obviously, he's been very vocal, saying it could jeopardize 6,300 small businesses, 40,000 jobs. So here we are, a platform that looks on, yes, the cannabis side, yes, the hemp side. We want to make a voice from both sides and give you a calculated understanding as to how both industries are viewing the news in Texas. So big one coming up. Let's get into it. Welcome in AV here on a Wednesday. Good to see you. Happy belated Memorial Day.
Thank you. It was nice. It was my daughter's 3-month birthday. So we
3 months.
3 months, 3 whole months. I think that's the last milestone I'll celebrate until it's 1 year.
You won't.
The 90-day mark and
the 6 month one's a big one.
Yeah, I know.
Is she rolling over now?
She is rolling over, yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm pumped for her to get mobile.
How long is she now?
26 and a half inches.
26.
And she all of a sudden will not shut up. She is just babbling and all over the place. So she's getting more animated by the day.
That's the best.
It's pretty wild seeing a little human develop right before your eyes.
It's amazing, man. Enjoy the moment, as they say. Speaking of enjoying the moment, I got to admit, I think Rubicon is enjoying this right now based on their latest earnings. And with that, let's welcome back CEO of Rubicon Organics, trades on the TSX venture, ROMJ, Margaret Brody. Good to see you. Have things and great report. That was some interesting numbers, to say the least. Are you there, Margaret?
Thank you. Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I might have a delay. I'm sitting in a hotel, on the road as you do, and keeping busy. But look, we were excited to report our results this morning. We had 39% year-over-year revenue growth.
Yeah. The
biggest part of that, our 1964 brand and the launch of Vape that we did last year. If you look at our business, before the acquisition we plan to close very, very shortly of the Hope facility, the old Canna Farms facility, we've grown our business considerably in the last 2 full years. Yeah. And it's been through contract manufacturing and launch of new product lines, whether it was edibles in 23, vape last year. And this morning we just announced that we will be entering the all-in-one vape category this summer. So more to come from us.
Yeah, it's great to see. Well, I was going to ask you off the top the question, but you pretty much answered my first question. But you also reported $700,000 adjusted EBITDA this quarter. That's a $1.1 million swing from Q1 of last year. So what were the key internal changes, I guess, that really helped you achieve that turnaround? And can this profitability be maintained?
Well, we're looking to do a lot better than that. I can tell you that. Right. Q1 is seasonally quiet for Rubicon. We've traditionally been down 20 to 25% in the first quarter with dry January, and then the provinces have their year ends at the end of March, so they stop ordering for a good week. A number of the big provinces this year, with the addition of vape and the momentum we have with our brands, we've seen us blow by that, and we're very happy to be not down as much. But look, we've got bigger ambitions to grow this business from the standpoint of quality first and focus. We're holding our position with our market share in Canada, whether it's in premium, whether it's in pre-roll, in vape. We're actually growing, and we hold 27% of the premium edibles market, and about our topical brand. Still holding number one in Canada. We've seen a lot of competitors enter that market. It's still quite a small category, but our quality is ringing through in the brand promise that we've got. So very proud of the print.
Good.
Well, one of the things that we keep hearing in the U.S. is what's the health of the consumer? It's clearly evident that the health of the Canadian cannabis consumer, they're still gravitating towards premium. You're able to command that with your price, and we're seeing the numbers continue to trend to the upside. What's the strategy moving forward, and what's the data telling you? Are those consumers still holding true to that premium category? And is there and what is the pricing strategy moving forward within the brands?
Good question. So look, inflation in Canada has started to level out quite considerably, and rents have actually gone down a little bit in the major cities. That being said, I think there's nervousness around major purchases generally from what's happened in the volatility of the last 3-4 months. I'm not an economist, so I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen, but I would say that we're bullish on the Canadian market. We've been careful with our portfolio, and maybe careful isn't the right word, planful. Is that a word? To make sure that we have products at every price point for a consumer that's looking for a small treat, someone that wants a larger format to be able to maybe share a bag with people. We're looking to make sure we're satisfying across the portfolio, and that when consumers buy our product, that they get the brand promise and they take their hard-earned dollars and they get a great experience. And then we're all about elevating the consumer experience. In terms of more widely, we've seen in the cannabis market every month growth, sort of year on year in terms of spending dollars. And we've also seen at the lower end of the market price being taken by a number of products. And there's been some very good reports over the last 6 months that prices really stabilized and started to move up overall in Canada.
Good.
Plus in the wholesale market, we've seen prices move up. So, I think it's a good news story right now. But if I were selling cars, maybe I'd be a little more nervous with the major purchases.
Yeah.
With the pricing, with the wholesale pricing in the Canadian market starting to trend up, and I know that you're leveraging contract manufacturing as part of the business. You have the Hope facility that's ready to close here, I think, shortly. Yeah. Are you expecting to expand margin within the business as you can bring your COGS down with that facility, and then in turn ride that trend of wholesale pricing, hopefully continuing to trend to the upside?
Yeah. Look, we're looking at our margins, and I think that there's some room for improvement there. It's about putting more capacity through a fixed cost base, very important. And we're looking at all angles. Just yesterday, when we did our raise recently, one of the things we said we were investing in is pre-roll automation. The machines, the project costs about $1 million. It pays back very, very quickly within the first year. And those machines arrived yesterday. So that's just one example of something that we can do to drive efficiencies and improve our margins. Looking at yield is always important. It always comes into mind. I think there's some work that we're expecting to come there. We're also doing things like trialing some new lights to see if that improves yield in our Delta facility. But we'd like to get Hope up and running first. Yeah.
So the word was plantful. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Well, if it wasn't a word, it is today. But to Anthony's point, what you just said about maintaining, I guess, some of this premium pricing, but you captured 5.1% national share in premium flower and pre-rolls and 14% in resin vapes. So good on you. And I guess how intentional is that category, or has that category mix been? And as you said, you are seeing, I guess, pricing power hold in these premium segments.
Yeah, we are. We haven't seen, I haven't seen major price being taken or price being dropped, other than if there's a quality issue. So I think we're in the wait and see. We're very aware of where the consumer is, but we also are starting to see that what we think is just the beginning of brand trust, where people, they're if they know the product quality is going to be there, consistently buying the same brand. And we're at early days, but look, we're almost 8 years into legal cannabis in Canada, and that's just starting to form. So imagine where we're going to be in another 3 to 5 years. And
I know
what we've talked about before on this program is the provinces are getting pickier about who they deal with, and the supplier scoring and the consistency. The retailers are as well. They want to make sure they've got rate of sale of their products. So continuing to build on that consistent quality and delivering for your customers, that's everything. And we're seeing a lot of people pull their brands out of Canada and sell all their product internationally. Great, I think, in the short term, but definitely there's some risk in that strategy. If we've just seen what just happened between Canada and the US and the world with tariffs. If you don't have an outlet for your product in Canada, you are a contract grower, contract manufacturing, and we believe route to market channels and customers are our most important asset.
In terms of the all-in-one vape, are you disclosing what the brand strategy is or what the product strategy is going to be? Is it going to live at premium? Is it going to go across your portfolio of brands? As that form factor is quite popular with consumers just being able to grab and go. Can you walk us through that, or is that still kind of behind behind the veil, so to say.
Well, we don't like to say everything we're doing because we don't like to give all of our competitive secrets away. But what I can say is that it's listed in Ontario for a summer launch. Likely first, still waiting to hear back from a couple of other provinces. So I can't give too much guidance on it until we know whether or not we were successful. And we certainly respect the process that occurs there. But look, wherever 1964 vape is sold in a 510 format, we're certainly looking to get the all-in-one format there. We do understand from a consumption experience, it's often a different consumer. It's a smaller format. It's a different convenience experience. So really excited. And we've seen success of our competitors in it, but not so much in the premium category. So we're really looking forward to coming out with a 0.5 gram format and coming in and taking a bite out of that market.
And is there a certain category that you're focused on right now that's growing faster than the other, or certain things that you're seeing within the data? Because obviously everyone's mind always reverts back to flower when you talk about the cannabis industry. Meanwhile, the other form factors have plenty of market share, whether it be pre-rolls, gummies, vapes. Is there a certain focus or certain product form factor that you are focused on, let's say for the next couple of quarters?
I would say vape. Look, we the statistics are it's the fastest growing part of the Canadian market. In the US, in the advanced markets, it's between 20 and 30%. Whether it's Colorado, Washington, or California, you look at that data. Canada's sitting 16, 17%. Now the whole pie is growing, but we expect that to end up closer to certainly over 20% of the Canadian market. Quebec has not yet launched any vape. We're waiting to see if we're successful there. We'll know this summer, and their focus is on quality and safety of consumption. Understanding that they've got a max THC of 30% on their products, and understanding that I think there's no flavored products going in there as well, and we don't have any flavors in any of our resin products. So really positive about it. I think vape is an incredible form factor for people. It's quick, it's discreet. I think flower is always going to hold a special place, in particular in certain provinces of Canada, and it does particularly well in the third quarter with the long weekends and campfires and all that. It's a great experience. In the winter, I think vape and gummies, etc., probably skew a little bit more, in particular where it's snowy.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely.
Phil writes, any products sold at High Tide or SNDL retail, is there?
Yeah, we have our products in Canna Cabana, and I believe in a number of SNDL stores as well. In I think Spirit Leaf and various stores like that. Yeah. Okay. No, we are across category with independents, larger groups, etc.
Yeah. Rose writes, ask her for her take on rescheduling, please. Not so much your thing as far as the US side. I will ask you, maybe it is, but the Canadian side, you talk about just the focus, a lot of companies on the international market and tariffs. The hopeful thing is that, look, we have a new administration in the Canadian government with Mark Carney now as prime minister. The hopeful thing is that they're going to review this and maybe look at the excise tax. What do you anticipate as to what's going to come? Any idea?
I think the first thing we're looking at is there's interprovincial trade barriers that they're looking to take down. And I'm expecting that government is looking at moving to one national excise stamp. For those who aren't aware, we have to place a stamp on every province for every product that goes in. It's expensive if you have to replace the stamp if the product doesn't go there, etc. And that's all labor cost. So one national stamp would be important, or a digitized stamp. I suspect government, and I hope government is going to move that way. I think that and I'm doing some lobbying with some organizations to talk to government to say this is a GDP builder for Canada. We should be extremely proud of this industry. I'm extremely proud of this industry and the jobs that we've created in Canada. I think it's a place where we can win in the world and build another great industry where we have experts. I look at the people in our business, and I'm proud to say I believe a number of them will be running businesses around the world over the next 20 years. And so I think Canada's got a leg up, and I want us to run with it. I think government will see that and start to invest, but I think it may take some time, and they probably have some other short-term opportunities that they've got to tackle.
Huh.
With your lobbying efforts and with the engagement that you are doing within the government, one thing we've seen in the U.S., we've seen laws obviously start to evolve as it relates to medical and adult use. We haven't really seen the federal government extend an olive branch to the industry, or quote unquote be willing to work with the industry to drive change. How accommodating is the Canadian government, for those that don't know, when you are engaging with them? Do they recognize the industry as one of Canada's differentiators globally, as you were the first G7 nation to legalize it on a recreational scale and acknowledge that cannabis is legal?
Oh, they certainly acknowledge it's legal, because this government, under Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau, legalized it. I think that they are waking up, and they have been receptive and supportive in a number of ways, but government moves at a different pace than industry. So I think that's probably been the frustration and challenge. Canada also, and the government, takes their position as being leaders in the world very seriously from a public health perspective, and I think that is one of the benefits, but also one of the weaknesses of our system. I suspect that we're going to start to see some movement and more support for the industry, but I suspect at some stage there'll be change in excise. I couldn't tell you when. Hey, crazy idea. I'd love the government to say, if you took a third of let us invest in the industry. If you took a third or half of the amount we're paying in excise, and you could invest it in R&D, innovation, capital, cost savings, let us run as an industry, would be my ask to government. Give us tools so that we can be a dominant player in the world. We have the ability to do that. And I'm not wearing my Canada pin today because I'm sitting in Montreal, but we should be very proud of the know-how that we've got. And I think the world is going to look to Canada to, competition drives innovation, and we need competition. I think that's one of the limits of some of the limited license states, is you're not playing with real competition. And yes, it's not very much fun when there's price compression and other things happening, but because we've gone through that, we are much more competitive businesses, and I'm here for it. Let's go take it.
Was it October of 2018 they legalized it federally, correct?
Yeah.
It's like they put the framework in and just forgot about it, and 7 years have passed by.
That's why, and that's what prompted me to ask. It's like they legalized it, but are they still recognizing and acknowledging it and working with the industry to grow it? Because Canada could be the global leader in cannabis. It's there, the footprint's there.
Yeah,
they're beating the pants off of the U.S.
The provincial governments are starting to get on side and support. There was an Ontario budget 3-4 weeks ago that just was very supportive of the industry. I think British Columbia has been quite supportive. It'll be interesting to see where Quebec and Alberta step up. There's obviously other provinces, but I think this is when you start to look at the number of jobs, the economic power that this creates for our country. It's moving. It's important. C3, Cannabis Council of Canada, last week came out with a new survey talking about the numbers, talking about the amount of excise that's being taken out. But there's not just the excise tax. There's also, we pay 2.3% on the top line of the Health Canada fee every year. So there's a lot of hidden other fees that are in there. I suspect that we're going to start to get some support there. I haven't heard that, but I think in this economic environment where there's an opportunity for Canada to win, let's just go do it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Let's go do it, and let's go and move around the world.
A year ago, Anthony and I were in Toronto filming at Canna Cabana for High Tide, and that night we actually went to it's called the Real Sports Bar downtown Toronto to watch the Stanley Cup Finals games. He obviously wanted to see because his Panthers, it's going to look like it's going to be a rematch again. But when we were there, we didn't realize there was a huge conference for the iGaming industry. And they had legalized iGaming, a year or 2 years prior. And the revenue that the province of Ontario was generating was astronomical. Biggest month they had seen in North America. So I was like, these are the opportunities, I think, that the cannabis space, with the right preparation and right attention, I think the days of looking at how Canada botched the ball are gone. Because yes, to your point, and David asks, was it Boris who said that Canada is 10 years ahead? No, it was you who said that. And with that, I just think that there's so many opportunities that are still at play, that Canada could be this great turnaround story. And let's face it, we have an aging country. We have to fast forward immigration, and there needs to be job opportunities. And this is a huge new industry that's growing rapidly and still does.
Yeah.
And Canada is the home of quality in the world.
Good point.
Because the U.S. isn't playing in that game. They're insularly focused right now. So There are other countries turning on, whether it's Colombia, Thailand, South Africa, Malta, etc. But the quality, and Australia, I should point out, excuse me.
Yep.
We're very proud of our quality. We're very proud of, the Canadian consumer is discerning and they're tough. They weigh a lot of people weigh everything. If you're not doing it, you're going to hear the complaint.
Really?
That creates a robust, strong industry. And we're innovating. We're looking at genetics. We're looking at new form factors. We're around the world. I'm very proud of where we're sitting. I think that the turnaround, I think that the weak moments are behind us. I think the turn has already happened. It happened probably in the fourth quarter of last year. We haven't yet seen that necessarily reflected in the investment side. There's a few companies that are getting there. I think the winners with decent balance sheets are going to emerge. I think other companies, the balance sheet's not there. You've got to clean up your balance sheet before you're going to get rewarded. But I suspect this time next year, we're going to be having a different conversation. And as you can see from Rubicon with the deal we just closed, we're looking at growth capital. We're not looking at we're ready to run. We're running forward. We're excited. We're turning on. We expect to be closing our new facility acquisition in the next couple of weeks. And in doing that, we'll be increasing our production capacity by over 40%. There's a home for all of that. There's demand for all of that product, not just in Canada. Plus, we have contract growers that we're proud to work with. That has worked out very well. Got 2,000 incremental kilos coming in from that group this year. And hey, I don't know if you've been following our news, but we also just appointed the former CFO of Aurora, Glenn Ibbott, in as interim CFO. He's very experienced. Glenn tried to retire, realized he might not be ready to retire quite yet. And fortunately, I called right at the right time. And so we've been lucky to bring in somebody who's got a ton of experience in the industry. He's been with us for 2 weeks. And even off the back of that, that's not my dog. On Monday night, our team was at the Grow Awards in Toronto, and we won Standard Producer of the Year. So, look, there's momentum behind Rubicon. We're with all of the growth opportunities we've got in the pipeline. We're here to play. We're here to show that great Canadian companies are emerging, and it's going to be an exciting couple of years. I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. Well, I know we talk about domestic, but obviously there's the great opportunity for exporting. I don't know if you saw, but it was just reported that Germany recorded a 37.2 tons of medical cannabis in Q1. I'm just reading this now, nearly 5 times higher than last year. So Canada is leading the supply push, and you've already indicated Germany is going to be part of your strategy, which other companies in Canada as well. But all as well, when you talk about the domestic market, as far as premium's concerned, and then you tailor in, obviously, the exporting opportunity, there's a lot of growth opportunities. And I just wanted to get Anthony's dog's take on what he thinks of that question too.
She actually.
There's a lot of women in your house.
Yeah, okay.
My house.
I'm outnumbered.
Yeah.
I am completely outnumbered.
So is my husband.
But all in all,
on the German front, Germany is going to be a giant, but so are other countries. The Polish market is massive already.
Good point.
The UK is coming. France is later next year. This wave is coming. I think with supply demand, we're going to see a bit of this. We're going to see, we have too much of this product, not enough of this, because of the way the export permits and process works. But overall, the trend line is significant and large growth. We're seeing product coming in from other markets that I expect a lot of it is in sort of the lower end of the market. There's not enough premium supply.
Correct.
Full stop. And there's not been capital, so there's not new supply being created that is at the upper end of the market. And there's not a lot of knowledge out there to be able to do it on scale. So most of that knowledge is sitting in Canada.
Okay.
From a wholesale perspective, do you think that there's a certain point in time where that price gets to where Canadian LPs start to make a decision to repatriate that cannabis that 100%. They're exporting to Europe? And if so, is that then going to create another supply glut like what we had seen before? Not necessarily in the premium category, but I would assume amongst the value and mid-tier categories would start to get, I don't want to say saturated, but you'd see the supply just start to really hit the market. And if so, would the distributors on the provincial side start to insulate and defend those that decided to stick to their guns and cater to that Canadian consumer, regardless of what was going on overseas?
So I'm going to take that as two questions. The first about demand supply internationally, and the second in terms of repatriating. One is, I think we're going to see naturally, we don't have enough, buy too much. Oh, and it's going to be chunky.
Yeah.
But the overall trend line is moving in one direction, which is more supply. In terms of provincially and the distributors here, customers are very important. Working with customers is extremely important. If you had a doctor and maybe a doctor isn't a hairdresser who used to do a great haircut, but you find someone else and then they come back to you and say, oh, now I have time for you. You're good enough for me again. How would you feel about that?
You don't go back.
And I think that's probably the analogy. So nobody likes to be second choice. And that isn't to say that there won't be people that will be successful at doing that because they've got great quality product and there's demand there. But you need to be a consistent supplier. This is like, if you go to Costco and say, I can supply you for a month, but then I'm going to go to Walmart for 3 months, they're not going to be very happy. And so I can't speak on behalf of the provinces or the stores, but stores are looking to also satisfy their consumers' needs. So it's not a choice we've made, but I think there's lots of time and lots of room in this overall market. And look, we'd love to, if there's people that want to come back to Canada and have great quality product, we'd probably love a phone call from them to see if there's a home for some of their product in our brands. So I think there's, once you let go of all those routes, the supply, the sales, the marketing, the packaging, all that, it's expensive to restart it. Mm-hmm. And so it's a challenge to come back into getting back on shelf in Canada.
Yeah. Consistency is key, and that is learning curves within the industry. I live in a town where it's the biggest greenhouse operations in North America. You got the big brands, and you got the smaller farms if they can't top orders, but it's all about consistency. And if you're not, you're out and you lose those contracts with the big grocery chains across North America. So that's the growth of the industry. It takes time. But I think the key here is we've talked about this for years and people don't really understand as to how it's going to look. But now they have that understanding, and that's what's key. And that's the growth of the industry. And like we said, it takes time. But kudos to you and your team. Great work. And congrats, obviously, on the new appointment. That'll be interesting to see and have him on in the future. But hopefully we see you. We're going to see you in Chicago in a week and a half for Ben's.
Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to make Chicago, but I'm there cheering everybody on. And look, we, watch out, World Canada's coming with our quality production. And we've got a lot of great peer companies I'd love to see be successful. We want a strong Canadian industry and everybody to win because a rising tide floats all boats.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, let's keep in touch. But thank you for the update. And again, great job on your latest earnings. Okay.
Thanks, gents.
All right.
Thanks,
Margaret.
Bye.
Job well done. And what I really like is that she's educating us on the Canadian market as a whole as to what we're seeing and how it's growing. And fingers crossed with this new administration that we do see change, because like you just said, it's like, did Canada just legalize it and forget about it? It sure felt that way because there's so much change that's put in play. And I did an evergreen that was pretty interesting about Canadian and their excise tax last week. So if you got a chance, make sure to go onto our channel afterwards and check that out. But it's just, you had $10 a gram basically, and where it launched, and now we're at $3 to $4, and that's why there's this 31.5% excise tax, which is astronomical. And
it's crazy.
You've heard
never shifted the tax for price compression.
You've heard Michael say, "I work for the government from January 1 to the end of August," and that's got to change. So
it's wild.
Anyway, today's podcast brought to you by Advisor Shares ETF PSIL. If you want to look at the psychedelic space, we saw some great movements, continue to see some good movements with the Thai. Cybin's been doing well in the last couple of weeks, but like Wiz said last week, if you're a little nervous to actually buy, and this is not investment advice, but if you're nervous about looking at one specific company, this is where the ETF comes into play. It trades on the New York Exchange ARCA under the ticker symbol PSIL. It's Advisor Shares PSIL ETF presented here today.
It's actually a good point by Lucas. What's going on with Cresco?
Good point.
I've reached out to Charlie and see what's going on because I know they were supposed to report by the end of May.
Yeah, I did reach out to him this week and have not heard, but we'll keep you updated. Antonio writes, looking sharp, Anthony. Yeah, he is. It's looking good for a man that's got a lot on the go right now on the home front. But Listen, great show. We've had some incredible, I don't want to say incredible, but some really important news that happened in the Lone Star State last week regarding SB3. And like we are with the platform, we always want to represent the cannabis and also the hemp side. It's important to get their take as well. So let's welcome in the Executive Vice President of Edibles.com, Thomas Winstanley, first time to the podcast. Good to meet you, sir. I like the headphones. How are you?
Hey, guys. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Where are you based out of, Thomas?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
Just relocated here for this position almost a year ago at this point.
Okay. You've seen a lot of growth, I would think, in the last 12 months, yes?
It's honestly, I thought cannabis was crazy until I set foot into the hemp world, which is an entirely different beast. A lot of similarities, but it's a moving target in so many different ways. But tons of growth, a very interesting shifting landscape around beverages, chews, ingestibles versus inhalables.
Yep.
So we're fortunate to be right in the center of that storm here in the US.
Well, it's good to see change the right way. And I wanted to bring you on because let's face it, there was a hot topic in Texas, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. So first off, just in case nobody knows, edibles.com, it's an e-commerce platform for curated hemp products. So as we look at last week's news out of Texas, where the Senate passed SB3, sweeping measures that would ban all intoxicating hemp-derived THC products, including Delta-8, THCA, and now it's on Governor Greg Abbott's desk to get a decision. And if he signs off, this would take effect on September 1 of this year. You've been vocal. You've said this could affect 6,300 small businesses, as many as 40,000 jobs. So given the scale of the problem, yes, we have people that are definitely working by the rules in a lawful way, but we also have some that are pushing unregulated, unsafe products. So what do some lawmakers not seem to understand about the difference between cleaning up an industry versus how a lot of people in the industry feel in the hemp industry, which is completely wiping it out?
Look, I think this is a regressive approach, to say the least, in terms of the way policy can grow. Ultimately, look, we know that the hemp wave that is currently splashing across America is fueled by consumer sentiments and consumer adoption. We are creating avenues to purchase THC products in a mass scale that we have not seen, where even with cannabis has a hard way of penetrating some of these markets in the Southeast that have no policy but have an interest in these products. Unfortunately for Texas, this was a sweeping change that I don't think most of us saw coming, having been part of a lot of trade associations, speaking with lobbyists and boots on the ground. This was something that was almost bizarre in the way that it came about, with a lot of competing interests, as well as political theater. I think at the end of the day was a big piece of this. And for Texas being, the second largest populous state in the country, the largest hemp market, I think there was a prevailing sentiment that this is too big. This is too big of an industry to see failure. And yet we just saw it, which I think raises some level of alarm bells.
Yes.
But at the same time, too, I think it's a cautionary tale that is not going to bode well for the politicians who are advocating for this. And the bifurcation of where now these products have to be accessed is not in the best interest of the consumers, the folks who need these products the most, folks like veterans having to be forced into teacup programs, so on and so forth. This is a massive shift, and I think this is going to play out as a fairly dark mark on the policy side of the Texas legislature. With 70% of the Texas population speaking out to say, we want this to stay, there's clearly a very large mouthpiece saying what is wanted, but a silent minority is the one who's now passing a regressive policy that directly impacts multiple stratas of the economy, the social construct, and honestly, larger consumer safety. And this is where I see this as a solution that just solves nothing.
So speaking about consumer safety, your website, edibles.com, I went through it. I've tried most of the brands that are on there. I'm a pretty discerning consumer when it comes to hemp, especially versus state-run cannabis. And I can see that you're obviously curating brands that are mostly naturally derived Delta-9 THC. They have full panel COAs. They have trust built within the brand. So kudos to you guys. You guys are a good actor in the space. My heart goes out to the 50,000 employees that are potentially going to be out of their job in Texas, and the 60,000 veterans that are going to lose access to the plant within a legal framework. But I'm assuming there is a reason that you don't have THCA flower on your site, as it is a product that does not truly have trust instilled in it. Things can get into those channels, as well as, let's say, synthetics on the HHC side, THCP side, the synthetic derivatives. Where do you see the industry going from a corporate responsibility standpoint, and let's say a self-governance standpoint, to get to where the industry looks like what you've created versus, and I'm not saying it's blanket in Texas, but
Right.
a lot of these rogue smoke shops that just sell anything and everything that the consumer wants to get their hands on. It's not tested. They don't do the best job at age gating, and it is a detriment to the industry. And that's really why we got to this ban versus sensible regulation.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack in there. I think first and
Yeah.
foremost, where I see a future state bifurcation of policy, which is really you build a business based on where do you see a market landscape going? Where do you see the segmentation of the types of products and the accessibility? And where do you draw distinctions? Very clearly, I spent the last 6 years in the cannabis industry with Theory Wellness and our sub-brand High Five. I got to live through, since 2018, all sorts of things as we scaled into 7 states from 1 state. And what I think became really clear to me was hemp became a gateway for accessibility. Hemp was actually people don't realize THC is legal. We legalized it. All the talk of prohibition that legalization is going to come, sure, to some extent, but we created an artificial classification of a plant basically based on 0.3% weight by volume to create this system that existed that we know as hemp. I think where we draw a line and where we philosophically see the bifurcation occurring is we're not talking about regulating hemp or cannabis. We're talking about THC regulation.
Yeah.
We are talking about creating quality standards to mitigate and create access points to these categories. From our view on edibles.com, what we talked a lot about is there is a fine line to me between ingestibles and inhalables. And I think there's also a very clear discretionary line that maybe it's arbitrary to us, but where I see a future coming is that, yes, 5 to 10 milligram serving sizes is a low risk approach to codifying a regulatory framework that is more akin to creating more commercialized industry that can reach a lot more consumers, which is proof point of what hemp is doing today. I think where things get difficult is when you start to get into higher percentage THC, when you start to get into THC percentages that really start to push the limits of intoxication. And so when I look at the future of policy, as somebody who came from cannabis, who is now in hemp, there's a very huge difference between what we're doing and what I did with Theory when we were selling THCA pre-rolls and all of these.
What do you mean by that? Can you give an example?
Yeah, so I think within the hemp industry, it's a lot easier to create a safe threshold for consumer accessible products where you're not selling 1,000 milligram per chew gummies at a gas station. I think the bifurcation comes from the coexistence of these two industries, and the merging of cannabis and hemp is really going to come down to where do we feel that there is an acceptable tolerance and dosage around the THC in a product and where you can purchase it. Do I think that gas stations should have more than 10 milligram servings per unit? Probably not. But I think there should also be access for people who are looking for higher testing products through dispensary channels, so on and so forth.
100%.
And I think that to me is the easiest bifurcation, because if you look at the metrics or the demographics of the Southeast, the top buyers in the Southeast are 55 and older. And these are people who have never bought legal THC products. They may not have even used these products in the last decade or so.
Yeah.
And so what I think the policy framework is moving towards is a bifurcation between, we're not talking about regulating hemp and cannabis, we're talking about THC content and THC limits and trying to create some strata. I will tell you, as somebody who lived in New England, I lived in Massachusetts, the first East Coast recreational market, it was wild. And when I moved down here to the South, I was astounded going to my first gas station in Georgia to see blunts, hot blunts being sold at a gas station. And that really concerns me. That to me is a consumer threat, because you don't get COAs. When I scan the COAs, they go to dead end websites. And this to me is a consumer health threat. And to take this back to Texas, I always want to assume good intent with policy leaders and advocates, because I think generally there's a lack of information or understanding of category, because it is difficult to understand if you are somebody from the outside looking in and saying, well, why are these things now legal? Why haven't we done anything about it? But I do think there's a sensible way of looking at it. And Texas swung the pendulum way too far. And I can understand the sentiment where there is a real consumer health threat. Those products that are sold in gas stations are not safe.
So let's say you're governor of Texas. What's the smart approach here?
Don't sign the bill. I think that's the simplest answer, is don't sign it. I think you are going to alienate your constituents. The VFW, which represents 1.5 million veterans in the state of Texas, all signed on to say, do not do this to us. This is our access channel to a therapeutic quality of life from a plant-derived product that helps us deal with the impacts of what we've contributed to for this country. Don't take this away. And while the teacup program, I think, is something of an exchange of sorts, the teacup program is going to be more expensive. The cost per units for comparative prices in the hemp industry are astronomical. There's nowhere near the same level of access points. And again, I think it's not within the best interests of any of the consumers, the economy. I think this drills down into a very, very deep core issue where all of a sudden hemp became this rallying cry for policy where nobody really wanted it. And I think the biggest insult to injury to me was SB 3 went through the Senate, fine, okay, goes to the House. The House actually comes back with a more progressive codifying of the law, which included a bifurcation between ingestibles and inhalables. And it had a more measured approach. And to not even take that to discussion within the House, to have the rug pulled in the way it was, that to me is unconscionable in so many ways.
So here's the thing, and I think people from the cannabis space will bring up, and it's like they feel like in a lot of ways hemp products are operating under looser rules and undercutting the legal market. So from your perspective in the hemp space, do a lot of people from the cannabis industry have a point? And if so, which I think they do, what's the better path, I guess, for a better alignment between both industries?
So I, as somebody who, again, coming from the cannabis industry and having the epiphany of this goes from existential threat to market opportunity, let's not forget that most people in the cannabis industry, from my early days, even until when I left, we were in it to create access to THC products, period, regardless of channel. But what we wanted to do was to be able to create an economic driver for people who were passionate about it, for entrepreneurs. And I think for the people who are now at this phase, I don't think anybody could have projected back in 2018 or 2019 how large this industry would get. No. But you are now seeing that, we have very strange bedfellows in the hemp industry where alcohol, which was previously vehemently opposed, are now in major support of this category. You're also seeing MSOs who were previously vehemently opposed to this category now moving into this space. And what I see for cannabis,
because of interstate commerce, like they can pass
precisely
state lines, right?
Well, but here's the other thing: if you build a really good brand, why not commercialize your access within this new economic driver where you can extend your reach as a brand? Theory was we were very much isolated in the Northeast. We were in about 7 different states, but now they're, moving into this category because they have the ability to extend the brand recognition where there's already a built-in quality and trust and level of understanding. And Anthony, to get back to what you were mentioning about these brands, there's a reason why all these brands are on this platform, because they've actually withstood the test of time through a gauntlet of regulatory challenges and ups and downs. I want these kinds of brands because I think part of what we're trying to create this level of permission for is to say, if you're buying with us, well, these are the most tried and true brands that have the highest level of compliance. they have a lot to lose. They're not going to abuse policy.
Absolutely.
And I think this is where cannabis and hemp are slowly becoming the same thing, because it's
So
almost
what
every day
happens in the
you're
event
seeing
that
this.
what happens in the event there's rescheduling? Like, is there enough room for both these industries to thrive?
I think it is the same industry.
Yeah.
I think I think we're just calling it's THC. Yeah, we're not, again, we're not talking about, unfortunately, policy is a reflection of the classification that has an arbitrary designation of 0.3% weight by volume. But again, we're not talking about regulating a plant. We're regulating a molecule. The molecule is what we need to discuss. It's not about cannabis or hemp. It's THC.
Thomas said the most important part, and it's what I said when Curaleaf announced that they were doing select gummies. Boris just jailbroke his brand. He just took the brand out of the dispensary. He just took his brand out of the dispensary, and his brand is now malleable. He can put it in big box. He can put it in liquor stores. He can put it in C stores. Same thing with Wana. Same thing with Kiva. Same thing with all of the major brands. And the most important thing that Thomas said was 2 milligram, 5 milligram, and 10 milligram servings are the most important thing that the cannabis industry has probably ever had happen to it, because that's bringing people into the fold that are afraid to go into the dispensary. They're trying cannabis. They're becoming consumers. They're gravitating towards THC. That would have never happened if we didn't have hemp products and we stayed within the confines of the dispensary. That being said, instead of this great bifurcation, there needs to be an amalgamation of the two and come together as one industry that's governed under the regulation of THC. And unfortunately, from most of the people that are within the cannabis industry's perspective, the existential threat is not those actors in that 2, 5, and 10 milligram space that have hemp products. It's the synthetics, and it's the exotic inhalables, and it's everybody that's under that umbrella, to where, God forbid, you see on Fox News or CNN, a kid's got a bag of 1,000 milligram sprayed Doritos. That's cannabis at the end of the day. People in the mass media can't make the difference like we can, to where that's not a regulated or a safe or a product that you would ever stand behind. These bastardized products that fall under the auspices of hemp, they need to go.
They need to go.
I'm not saying this was the right guidance, but there was some guidance from Washington regarding the hemp industry. And that is when Mitch McConnell and everything was passed off under the Trump administration with the Farm Bill. 7 years ago, things have changed, and I don't think they passed the Farm Bill based on what it would look like today. But that's the challenge to the cannabis space right now. There's so much disconnect on the state level versus the federal level. And this is a number one example, hopefully with this kind of attention that Texas has brought towards this storyline, it'll get Washington to wake up to say, look, this has gotten way out of hand. And we were seeing judges talk about how marijuana laws don't align with today's in today's world and day and age, especially when you look at 70% of Americans that support it. But that's the missing element in a lot of this right now. It's just some direction and guidance from Washington, which we badly need.
Well, I think the other thing too, Anthony, you're spot on. It's the serving sizes, right? Yeah. I also think that people who are buying a 5 milligram seltzer, from Total Wine or somewhere, they're also not the same consumer who want to buy a 99% THCA pre-roll. So, and I think part of where, I've in retrospect now look back and say that, 2018, when we created the Farm Bill, and ironically enough, hemp has attracted some very strange bedfellows, but really it was Mitch McConnell who legalized THC.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we all have to take a moment and realize, well, now that we're all kind of playing on the same team, how do we prevent this stuff from happening in the future in a state like Texas?
Good point.
Yeah.
How do we really start to put together a federal framework? And I think 2026 is the year to do it. So the Farm Bill has another extension this year of 2025. It comes back to the table in 2026. I think this is the year. I think 2026 is going to be a very interesting year. I do not think that Texas will become a case study. I don't think Texas is going to become a domino effect. No, because look, Alabama just put together rules. I mean, Georgia is a great example. Georgia was one of the largest hemp markets. And somebody had made a comment to me about, well, Texas was too big. There's no way to reel it in. Well, Georgia did it. And I spoke with some regulators, and they had done somewhere to the vicinity of a couple of hundred site visits post regulations being implemented to go weed out the bad actors.
Okay. And so So you said, if you're the governor, don't sign this bill.
Yeah.
What does this look like? What is the solution here in Texas then? Action plan moving forward. What would you do?
So if I had carte blanche on this, I would there are a couple of very easy pieces to just lay out. One, I think serving size and milligram caps are exceedingly important.
Okay.
Ensuring that there is a very structured cap on it. I think allowing 21 plus establishments and independent retailers to have access to this with licensing. So licensing where there's a fee, an annual fee, that goes to offset any regulatory. I think adding a minor excise tax to these products and the sales, use those funds to then go fuel compliance and enforcement. I think ultimately what you do, and also take out a lot of the inhalables. I think that's another category that is the slipperiest of any to do a really decent job of testing and making sure it's not hot, that it's within a certain threshold. I think once you create an ingestibles category, codify it within certain points of distribution with good actors where you have visibility into who's operating, excise tax has become a really easy way to fund compliance and enforcement. And what you do is you start to accelerate the growth of the industry.
Yeah.
And I think, this sounds very easy for me to simplify it, but it does take work. And there is there is a responsibility on the government's end to go through and make sure that any laws that they introduce, that they are following up on to ensure that this doesn't continue to saturate with bad products. I think even labeling and standards are not the worst thing in the world. There should be no childlike illustrations, no name and likeness to traditional CPG products. I mean, these are the things that are causing the issues for us.
Yeah.
And I think making the availability is dangerous. And I think anybody who sells these products should be going through a very scrutinized age verification process at the time of purchase. I think there should be a zero tolerance policy. And what is, I think the insult to injury in Texas is they now have a 1 year jail time for anybody who is found with
the worst thing,
hemp-derived THC, which is worse than the marijuana possession, which is unbelievable to me.
As far as Texas goes, do you believe that there was a disconnect, or that there was a failure on the industry's behalf on conveying what they need or what should happen or what integrity is actually instilled in a majority of the industry that's going on in Texas?
I want to be really careful about how to answer this, because in all of the discussions that I've had, trade associations, lobbyists, brands, there are competing interests. Okay. There are a lot of voices. There is a lot of passion. I think that there were a lot of different avenues, and I think part of the emergence of this new category is finding the right voice and leaning into a single voice. And we're not mature enough as a category yet, because we're still learning what this is becoming. But I think there are a lot of competing interests. And I think the initiatives that were put forth from a lobbying standpoint were well-intentioned, but I think there was a lot of noise across the board. I think over time, we're going to learn to get better. We're going to learn as there are new trade associations where there's, bigger brands coming in. I also think partners like ourselves who are, I'm part of Edible Brands, which is part of Edible Arrangements ecosystem. I think having voices who are on the outside coming in, speaking truth to power to help kind of distill fears and concerns. I think there are more ways that you can approach these things, but I think you also have to be concerted in those efforts and try to be unify where you can. And I think there was a great opportunity. And trust me, I think ultimately at the end of the day, I don't know if there's anything that anybody could have done. I think I get a little bit of a sense of an inevitability where if somebody calls a floor amendment when there's a version of a bill just to go back to what they wanted in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, what opportunity was there? And I think ultimately when the staggering statistics and some of the things that were said around comparing this to fentanyl and overdose deaths, and this is reefer madness in the modern era of the highest caliber.
Yeah, this is where we can relate to a lot of that stuff. A lot of uneducation. We speak to a lot of executives that are in Washington, including speaking to some high-profile senators last week. They're all high-profile if you're a senator, but no education, no understanding of any of this stuff right now. And I brought this up last week. I'm watching a documentary or series on FX called Snowfall. It's about the crack epidemic back in the 1980s, 1983, in the Just Say No Nancy Reagan era. And as I'm watching this all unfold in the cars that are driving around, we're still talking the same language and these rules of stuff that's 40 plus years ago. So times have changed, you think, and there needs to be change. So listen, always good to have someone's different perspective on. I want to continue to have this conversation with you and have you on a number of times, but it's good to see someone's different perspective. And like I said here at our platform, we always want to make sure that, yes, you know, the cannabis space wants changes and things done obviously the lawful way. And I'm all for, and I think Anthony can agree, that we believe in the hemp industry, especially like the regulated hemp industry, and doing things the right way. And I think the big message here today, as far as Texas, is don't sign that bill and let's walk before we run and think this through, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to having you back on and diving into the edibles.com core business. And I'd love to hear the thesis on how you went from cannabis into hemp, and how you guys plan to grow that platform. Because like I said, I mean, you guys are doing it the right way, especially from an e-commerce perspective with curating the right products.
That's good.
I greatly appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on, and look forward to continuing the conversation in the future.
Thomas, awesome. Appreciate your time. Let's keep in touch. Okay.
All right. Cheers. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Thomas. Good guy. Love learning new things and love having new guests on, especially a hot topic like this, right?
Yeah. So, and I mean, I've never been shy on my opinions in hemp, as it relates to regulating and what I don't like about the market, but there's a lot to like. And it's those 2, 5, and 10 milligram servings, Delta 9 naturally derived THC, and brands that are doing everything by the book. That's how we normalize THC, because hemp has normalized THC. My wife, my mom, they'll buy hemp products. They'll go to the store and buy beverages. They would never step foot inside a dispensary, ever. And trust me, I'm not the only one that has that has that story. There's a lot of consumers being converted and made out of the hemp category.
Yeah.
Versus traditional cannabis.
Good show today, I think. And we're digging deep to find like some new narratives for everybody. On Friday, first time to the podcast, the CEO of Tilt Holdings, Tim Conder, is going to be joining us. And you're going to ask why. And here's the topic that we've got set up. Chinese tariffs are going to be a big impact on the vape space. Manufacturers of vapes, batteries, components are in Asia, with the majority coming out of China. So obviously manufacturing in Indonesia, Malaysia, and other places where they didn't get hit as strongly as China did, but still have increased tariffs. Well, Tim just got back from China, and he's got some interesting feedback on what we're facing and embracing, because I know originally it was about 145% in tariffs when President Xi and President Trump are going back and forth. But as it stands today, what are those tariffs? Around 30 to 40%?
Don't quote me, because I think Trump has changed this every other day of the week, but I'm pretty sure there's 30% standing tariffs on China right now.
So based on these tariffs, what kind of plans are in place with manufacturers? How rapidly can they move product out of China to Indonesia and other places? So that is going to be a hot topic, and it's an interesting one. Like I said, he was over in Asia and China, so we want to get his takeaway as to what his feedback was. But Tigro, good to see you. Thailand, if you need them. Good to see you, sir. Always love having you on. Anyway, CGC has their own vapes rights. Phil, vapes are... Oh, I'm not going to read that. Sorry, I started reading that and realized halfway through what it said. So that wraps up today's show. So it's been an interesting week. So anyway, good to see different perspectives, and very important to communicate to people here at TDR that wasn't going to bring this up, but I will briefly. Anybody who's a client of ours, we disclose it, and anybody who's not, we don't disclose it, or we won't disclose it because they're not a client of ours. So we want to make sure that when we're here on our platform, that we come with a very calculated approach and a level playing field. And I'm all for speaking to everybody and all parties whenever we have certain parties on that are very opinionated one side. And yes, I won't get too much into it. We've reached out to other parties to make sure that they can come on and represent their voice too. That's what we are at this platform. And a prime example of that is here today. We cover the cannabis space, but we very much want to have people on from the hemp space that speak their voice as well. And I thought there was a lot of learning that we got here today, didn't you?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. That was a very Switzerland comment of you.
Yes.
It's a great way to put it.
Well, it's the truth. So anyway.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Tim is going to be on. We'll have Dan from the Chart Guys back on as well. And then don't look now. We got some interesting stuff coming up next month. Going to be a busy, busy month for you and I. We're going to be, just confirm, we're going to be indeed, and we've mentioned this before, live streaming On Monday, is that June the 8th, if I'm correct, Anthony?
9th.
Is that Monday, June 9th? We will be in Chicago at the largest cannabis capital conference for Benzenga's conference. That's in Chicago. We're going to be live streaming all day long. We've got a podcast studio set up, so we're going to have all the biggest guests all in one room. We'll go live. We're looking and thinking of going live around 11 a.m. Eastern time, and we will have guests on. It'll be probably a 6 to 7 hour marathon all day that day, interviewing the biggest names in the industry. So we'll talk about anything and everything you guys want. So if there's any feedback, leave some comments below and let us know what are the things that you want to learn about. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but leave it on our community page and let us know some of the things that you'd like to learn. If we can get all the thinking heads in one room, what do you need to know about the cannabis industry right now and where it's going here in the back half of 2025? Obviously, rescheduling, among other things, reform-wise, is going to be top of mind, and see how that's progressing. So any guests that you want us to have on in particular, let us know as well. So that should be an interesting one. That's coming up in a week and a half. But lots on the go here, as June's going to be a busy one for us, which is great. It's always going to be busy, right?
Yep. Good to be a Benzenga again.
Good luck tonight. Hopefully your Cats can. I think they get it done tonight. I think they
full
just
strength. Mikola's back, and so is Sammy. So hopefully we close it up tonight, because I think that the Oilers are going to close up that series pretty quickly too.
I was a little worried about him the other night. I thought he was hurt, and I don't know what's going on with Zach Hyman from the Oilers. That's Shaquille O'Neal's favorite hockey player.
We would be in trouble without Mikola. We need Mikola.
Yeah. I just want both teams to be healthy, because I'm telling you, that rematch, that's one for the ages. It's great, you know. I like football. It's my favorite sport, but man, this hockey Stanley Cup playoffs, what a year it's been. When you go back to the Four Nations tournament and the Canadians and Americans dropping the gloves and the attention that it got post All-Star weekend, it's just been momentum. And you can't help but say, like, what a great hockey season it is, because, yeah, you don't want to see the same team win it all, but if you are, why not play the same team from last year? That's the way sports is supposed to be.
Cats Oilers rematch is going to be nice.
Yes.
I said it, though. I mean, obviously, I'm a cocky Panther fan. I mean, I think we're the best team in the league, and I want us to win the cup.
And who could argue?
If I have to lose to anyone, it's to Connor McDavid in the finals with his redemption arc, beating us for what we did to him last year. I could gracefully bow out there, but I still think we're going to win and probably take them in 6 or 7.
I looked last night. I was surprised. $524 per ticket, per seat. That's Canadian dollars to go down. It's like 8th row upper bowl Panthers game 4, which I don't think is that bad. But I guess if you're going to go, you probably want to go to game 6 or game 4. If they sweep them, that'll be a shock.
They're not. No, neither of those teams are sweeping.
No
one's getting swept. That's going to be a series. That's going to be a great Stanley Cup.
If they do win the Stanley Cup again, the next day you're going to want to back down. Want to be back down the A1A at the Elbow Room.
I will be at the Elbow Room. That is for sure.
Sounds like a lot of fun. All right, sir. Good to see you back, and happy belated. By the way, one last thing I wanted to mention too, Jack. I just wanted to say happy belated Memorial Day. Thank you for your service. I know there's a couple things that you'd mentioned about how the police treat you differently because you'd rather smoke weed than being an alcoholic. But regardless, just wanted to let you know that we're hearing you, my friend, and glad to have you log on here today and leave a comment, and appreciate obviously the support and the service that you provided our country. So all the best to you, and onwards and upwards. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. We'll see you back here Friday morning at 11 a.m. Thanks, everyone.
See you, everybody.
So, what'd you think of all that information? Some interesting stuff that we just learned once again here at the TDR Traded Black podcast. Let's keep the conversation going. So leave your comments below. We'd love to get your feedback. As usual, if you have time, make sure to like, subscribe, and smash on that bell for all notifications. And stay connected with us here at the Trade to Black podcast. Thanks for watching, everyone.